Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate it, and thank you everyone for being here. As a copper explorer, the first place I'm going to start is power. There's two things you need for copper production. One of them is water, the other is power. If you don't have power, you're going nowhere. And we're very fortunate to be in British Columbia, where we have an abundance of power. That power is hydroelectric power. You know, when you're grinding or crushing 100, 200, 250,000 tons of rock every day, every week, decade after decade, the principal cost or the highest cost for a copper producer is power. And when you have access to hydroelectric power, that's a relatively cheap power, all things considered, especially when you don't have to use diesel to power the generators. But British Columbia is blessed with that as well. And as we go forward here in the economy, everyone seems to want, lower carbon footprint, and hydroelectric power certainly suits that as well. As Greg mentioned, where are we in the cycle? I'm not sure, but we're ready, we're positioned, and certainly when things turn, we hope, certainly be taking advantage of that. Greg also mentioned that, and I think Gwen mentioned it yesterday too, how many projects you see. I think Gwen had a chart, but how many discoveries there were that actually, in terms of production, came to fruition. And it's kind of scary, actually, but it kind of makes sense, from a copper perspective, because copper is a big deal. I mean, copper mines are big. These are not small mines. These are not gold mines. But why are we confident that the area we're in, you can build a copper mine? I think our neighbors speak for themselves. We have Centerra there with their Mount Milligan gold mine. But we also have the addition of South 32 in the belt. They've been there about 18 months now. And so don't take it from me, the major South 32 from Australia. They're a serious player, serious miner. They wouldn't be in the belt we're in if they didn't believe they could actually build a mine. In addition, we took one of the First Nations band, the LeCloud Lake Band. They actually built Mount Milligan, and we took them across one of our properties, Pinnacle, a number of years ago, and did a tour with them in a helicopter, flew around, and one of their comments was, well, this is all great, guys, but call us when you're going to build a mine. If don't waste our time until you're ready to build a mine, guys, but call us and we'll build it for you. And so that's the sort of environment we want to be in British Columbia. We want to be in an area where we know, or we're highly confident, that the players in the area want us to be there, are fine with us building a mine, and want a mine. Because copper is a big deal. They're big mines, and they tend to have a big footprint, and it often scares a lot of people away. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure, before we go into these areas, that we're welcomed, we're wanted, and we're part of the community. And certainly in central British Columbia, where we are in this area, this is an area where we're pretty confident that, if we find something, it can be developed and or sold to a major. Our portfolio is pretty focused now. We used to be a prospect generator. That changed, and I'll get to that. But generally speaking, that yellow belt there, that's the Quesnel Train. That's where we tend to see a lot of copper gold deposits, copper gold mines. Within there, you've got your Highland Valley, of course, a very large mine, Copper Mountain, Gibraltar, New Afton, Mount Poly. So, to summarize, we're on Main Street, and we're happy with that. I think this slide, what it really does, it punches into sort of the area we're in and sort of replicating it. But what I want to show here is, I think, the value proposition of Pacific Empire. Yeah, we're no South 32, I get that. But if you look at companies like our peers, like Northwest Copper at 27 million or Pacific Ridge at 21, we're sitting at 5 million market cap with what I would argue is a equally attractive, if not more attractive, portfolio in terms of the potential for discovery, certainly in the near term. And so that's just something I want to point out to investors that, even if we're at $5 million market cap, we're still very undervalued. But if we're going into this summer and this fall drilling what I would consider to be very attractive targets, then I would have to suggest that we're a very, very interesting value play here. So what are our plans? We just completed small financing here, $425,000 around, that was in January this year. What we're going to be doing is a mobile magnetotelluric survey over the primary target area at our Trident property. That's our focus, and that's in anticipation of drilling in late summer, fall. And what we hope to find with the magnetotellurics is these things go deep. We're looking for pipes, fluid conduits, because really there's only one way to get billions of dollars worth of metal into rock, and you're going to need a serious plumbing system to do it. Our Pinnacle property, that's recently come back to us. It's 100% owned. Both projects are 100% owned, and both are in good standing for quite some time. But we plan to be, we're working towards diamond drilling on Trident here in the fall or late summer. Capital structure, 125.5 out. I think what I'd like to point out here mostly is the warrant overhang. There really isn't much of one, which we're very fortunate there to have that. And again, our share price, 4.5 cents, $5 million. I think that just goes to show the value proposition. Share ownership there, you can see there, as Greg mentioned, Haywood there in the blue for the most part. There's a syndicate in Vancouver as well. That's the 20% there in orange. And then so roughly 50% there is public float. Management, everybody, I'm not going to belabor it, but I think everybody at the show has solid management. I'll point out there our technical team, Dr. Paul Johnson. He's our senior advisor. He was with Teck for many years, in charge of looking at all porphyry projects in the Americas. So it's no exaggeration for me to say that Paul has pretty much seen it all. The Trident, this is our flagship property. This is really what I want to talk about here today. We actually had this property. We optioned it back in 2012 and had it to 2014, but it was too expensive to hold on to. We had Oz as a partner, but I love the project. I loved it because Paul Johnson in 2014 recognized and really uncorked it by recognizing that it was a porphyry system and that it was being driven by porphyry intrusions. Nobody had recognized this before. The alteration here is cryptic. I'll try and hit on that at the very end, why. But make no mistake, it really wasn't easy. Nobody saw this for years and years, and Paul nailed it. Came up and said, look, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a porphyry system. When I look at these projects, I want to see a porphyry, and here it is in your box. Kind of went, oh, really? Okay, sure. But absolutely, we know it's here. I've wanted this property forever. And what had happened was the underlying owners got the property back. But over time, the owner got sick. He had a couple strokes. His project was handed back to his wife to run the company, and she was running out of time. And she called me at the last minute and said, Brad, we're going to lose our baby. What are we going to do? You're the only person we trust. What should we do? Long story short, we ended up doing a 2% NSR, of which I can buy 500 grand. So we got the property for zero cash, zero shares, and due to some little bit of magic in the mineral titles branch, I was able to push the project out for 5 years. So very fortunate there. Magnetotellurics, as I mentioned, this is what we're going to be up to imminently after PDAC. So this is going to happen pretty darn quick. And this is really on our Trident property, just to give us a little bit more confidence in terms of degree of confidence that we're drilling in the right spot. I'm pretty sure we are, as what I'll get to, and it should be pretty straightforward. But I've also kicked it out onto that target there. That's on our Pinnacle project. And interestingly enough, in 2012, that was our highest ranking target in the entire region. Couldn't get to it though. It was covered in swamp. It's just inaccessible. That's changed due to forest fires, logging, and more forest fires and more logging. It is now a lunar landscape that you can easily drive to. And so I thought might as well extend the MT survey over that and see what we get. This is what gets everybody excited, including myself, about the property. I'm going to turn around a little bit because I don't have my glasses on, but generally speaking, you can see the grades here are pretty darn good. 102 meters, you're looking at 0.6. Generally speaking, 0.6 copper with very attractive gold grades. But what I would like to do is turn your attention to some of the 2-meter intervals there. You see these short little intervals? That's where they're encountering this stuff. This is the porphyry that Paul Johnson recognized. It's very significant because it's juiced. That stuff runs 1 gram in a percent. Now, it's just little fingers or wisps, or Paul likes to call them wisps. He likes to think of a porphyry as something like a campfire with the flames above it. I call them fingers, but that's what we're looking at. Where you see these 2-meter intervals, 1 gram in a percent, you're seeing, again, 1 gram in a percent, 2%, 2.7% copper. So this porphyry is really juicy. It's just that these little fingers, we got to find more of it. So how do we do that? Well, everybody had always drilled this property from north to south. We're going to turn around and drill it from south to north, and we're going to start chasing these things. And I passed this to a gentleman and spoke with him. He's a partner in an engineering firm. And his comment was, well, this is how they found Cascabel. This is how SolGold did it. They had these occurrences. They couldn't kind of figure them out. They turned to their drill, parked it on top, and once they finally started going down these fingers, they get about 200 or 300 meters down, and all of a sudden, boom, blows up. And that's the story really of Cascabel, and that's what we want to do here too. Because we know porphyry's not over here. It's been drilled. Like, we know that. It's not over there. And this here, it has to be coming from somewhere over here. So you've got to turn the drill. You just have to do it. And there's the added bonus of, well, our first proposed hole, we know we're going to get grade, but we don't know what's below there, right? So it's a kind of a win-win, hopefully a win-win-win. This is what we think's going on the property. It's pretty, I'm a geologist, not an artist, obviously. But generally speaking, that's the surface there. We're seeing these little fingers stick out kind of here. And instead of drilling this direction, away from the porphyry, you got to turn the drill and go into it, where we believe it's emanating from. Kind of straightforward, but that's our general plan. So in the end, it's all about really what are the rocks telling us. And here's where the porphyry's been drilled. This is the A zone down here. Again, they were drilling this direction away from what we think it is. Again, intersecting this porphyry, very attractive. That was in 1971. And this was 2007. That's when some of the more interesting drilling took place, kind of replicating the stuff in the 70s. In the 90s, when they used to think this was like a, I don't know, hosted shear zone sort of thing. So they tried to extend it this way and extend it that way. So when they went to the east, they got this. And that's just extremely altered granitic rock. It's monzonite. But it takes a pretty intense system to turn granite into pudding. And so we know there's something going on here. We know there's a porphyry somewhere kicking in this area. We know the alteration gets pretty nasty out here. And we know when we head to the west, that's visible gold in basically an epithermal vein. And you get a little higher in elevation here too. So we know, look, south is taken care of, west is taken care of, east. We've got to get to the north. And what do we see when we go north on this property? Some pretty wild stuff, as a matter of fact. Real quickly, in addition to these porphyry systems, you often see breccia pipes coming off these suckers somewhere at some point. They're not far. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. But generally speaking, we're seeing samples up here, 3% copper, 3 grams gold. This has just been washed with hydrothermal fluids. All left behind was high-grade copper. Then again, lots of this stuff, just chunks of metal that have been basically ejected through a breccia pipe. And then this bad boy, this is one of the stranger things I've ever seen. But the late, great Jeremy Richards suggested to me when I showed him that sample, it's the barite, not the 6% copper. That is nice too. The strangeness of the barite. And Jeremy Richards, before he passed, he was a professor at University of Alberta. These type of crazy systems were his forte. And when I said, Jeremy, well, what's up with this barite? It seems pretty, nobody can explain this stuff. And his explanation was kind of simple, but it made sense why nobody's kind of figured out this cryptic property, in the sense that he said, you get these things, they're called telescoping systems. You get a porphyry system here, and over time, another system develops. This thing collapses on top of this one, telescopes, and that's why we get these bizarre on-surface alteration. There's a lot of alteration, and it's so easy to understand why. Over 50 years, people would find it very difficult to sort of interpret what's going on. But 50 years later, I think we're pretty darn close on this property. I think our target is right in there, and we're going to stick the drill and basically head that direction. 50 years later it took, but I think we're pretty darn close here to a discovery hole. This is just a shot from 1971. This was Falconbridge in 1971. This was a monumental effort by Falconbridge to get in here. This was not easy. They had to barge. They can't fly in here, that's just hopping stuff around, but they had to barge all this stuff in dozers and everything from way down a lake down here, build a road all the way through here. That was a big deal in the 70s. So what Falconbridge saw in 1971, they liked, and they put a tremendous amount of effort into getting in here. Unfortunately, in the 70s, people didn't know what porphyries were. Nobody had any idea. They were looking for just high-grade copper on surface, full stop, that was it. And we're hoping that 50 years later, we can finally put the drill hole into the porphyry and reward our shareholders for their patience. Thank you very much for your time.